Hello, folks. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We are here with another Places They Take You. This week, we are featuring the high country. We are blessed here in the state of Colorado to have four headwater rivers. We are a headwater state indeed. So we're going to be talking today about getting up in the high country. Joining us today is going to be Davis James of Anglers All down here in Littleton, Colorado. For those of you who don't know Anglers All, you definitely should. They're a fabulous fly shop. We're lucky to call them a partner of ours here at Umpqua. And Davis is the person over there who runs a lot of the visuals that you see happening at Anglers All. So if you pop over to their Instagram or their Facebook, a lot of that work is Davis's work. He was just up in the high country and we got to talking, and we thought this would be a really fun format to share kind of the special places that the high country takes us to. So today we're going to be kind of answering questions live. So if you guys have questions about fishing the high country or want to know more about certain aspects of what we're talking about, definitely mention it on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We're live simulcasting on all three of those. So we're going to be gathering your comments and answering them as quickly as we can. So if we don't get to them, let us know. We're going to be talking about Umpqua's all new leader in Tippet. This is our Perform-X nylon, our Phantom X ultra fluorocarbon, and our Deceiver X. And so if you guys can't make the whole thing, if you've got dinner plans or you're just finishing up with work, don't worry. This is all on YouTube. Don't forget, the rest of our videos are all up on our YouTube channel. Again, we featured the Arkansas River, the Henry's Fork, the Provo with our friends at Fly Fish Food, and we've got more coming up, and we've got a ton of great content on there in general. So check out our YouTube page. And without further ado, I'd love it if we could have Davis join us, and we'll start talking about the high country. Cheers, Davis.
How's it going?
Good, man.
How you doing?
It's 5 o'clock.
Oh, here we go.
I'm doing great.
Oh, I got a seriously big bobber for you right here.
Like your style.
Right on. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. This is a nice way to decompress after a regular day at the office here at Umpqua.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm tuning in from home as well. I figured it was been up at the shop since Sunday. We've been busy. A lot of folks getting out there on the water right now, and no better time of year to talk about the high country.
Absolutely. We're truly blessed in our state to have what we've got out our back door. Davis and I live about a mile apart as the crow flies, and about 45 minutes just due west of where we're at is an alpine environment for those willing to hike or take a little bit of a four-wheel journey. There are incredible places waiting.
Absolutely. That was a big draw for me to kind of move to the western side of Denver and be as close as I could to these spots. So again, thanks on behalf of Anglers All, thanks for having us, and really excited to chat.
Anglers All representing.
Right on. Well,
a couple of Greg Garcia bugs in that tin.
What was that?
I said a couple of hand-tied Greg Garcia bugs in that tin, which is pretty cool.
Those fish will just jump at those. You don't even have to make a cast. You just put them anywhere near the water.
This is why this tin remains, dry and untouched so far. For those days when it gets that tough, I've got this in my back pocket.
Yeah, for sure. Garcia has
Umpqua
a way to talk to.
Yeah, exactly. So Davis, you were just up in the high country last weekend. For those Anglers All fans that are on the page, I hope you guys were following along with some of the adventures. You guys have a whole series of kind of those weekend escapes that you're doing?
Yeah, we do. This is that time of year that we like to mix it up a little bit. Get off the tailwaters a little bit, escape from the freestones, and just start heading up in elevation. We've seen flows come down on a lot of our tributary creeks, and that's kind of a good signal that the conditions are right to head up in higher elevation and kind of seek these opportunities while they're around, because they won't be around too long as far as some of the higher elevation stuff goes. So I was just up over Cottonwood Pass. I believe you were just downstream from me. I was up above Spring Creek Reservoir and checking out a bunch of brookie ponds and streams, and what a great time it was, and what a great time of year to celebrate that high elevation.
Man, I'm in love with the high country. It's magic up there. For those of you that haven't been, or that you have been, you know exactly what we're talking about then. The high country is like, Davis, I know you're a visual guy. I'm a pretty visual guy too. It literally, you can't have a bad view up there. A lot of these lakes are nestled in a cirque, and you've got like a 13,000-foot peak that's like rising off the backside of a lake. And you look the other direction and you get that kind of infinity pond look. And in all the meanwhile, you've got cruising fish that are willing to come up for a dry fly, hopefully. It truly is one of the great things about Colorado. And I was downstream of you at kind of where the Gunnison starts, right there at the East River and the Taylor River. And the fishing was great. We had wonderful fishing. The crowds were out and about. It's the time of year to strap on the boots and kind of get away from some of those crowds that we're used to seeing all spring, especially here on the Front Range. It's been a crazy busy spring out on the water, an early summer.
It has. I wasn't involved in the fly fishing industry when the movie River Runs Through It came out, but that's what people are saying. We're seeing another kind of big buzz in the sport. And honestly, what a great topic to cover for people who are newer to fly fishing and want to get away and want to kind of seek that solitude that we think about with the sport. Heading up is the way to go for sure this time of year.
Yeah, totally. So you guys run a pretty unique program at Anglers All. I know you're doing a trip next week where you're actually helping people get up to the high country for the first time, or if they're pretty familiar with it, kind of offering them a unique place to go. Could you tell us and some of the folks out there what that's all about?
Yeah, the Flat Tops Wilderness area kind of exists between Meeker and Gypsum, north of I-70 there. And it's just truly a unique area. I went years ago. I used to work on a ranch in Steamboat, and I went there as just kind of a spectator, a photographer, and a sightseer. And we visited Trappers Lake, and it left an impression on me even without the fly rod. And right now, what we're doing through Anglers All is we've partnered with Flat Tops Wilderness Guides, and we're offering customers an opportunity to go explore something, domestically here in Colorado that truly will open your eyes to kind of a new piece of the state. This area historically used to be, navigated and occupied by the Ute Indians and the Ute natives, and it's a really unique area. It kind of is about at 10,000 feet, and I think there's a group going this weekend that will be staying in a lodge in Gypsum and taking horses up to fish these areas. And then next week, I'm going to be taking a group. We're actually going to 4x4 in from the east side and stay at a canvas wall tent. So really, it's kind of that true kind of high country Colorado experience that I'm mega excited about. And it'll really be the first time that I get to like bury my boots in the dirt with a fly rod.
So Davis, on that front, what do you recommending people bring along with them for the high country? Because on a lot of these trips people take, me included, as well as most anglers I see on the water, look like they bring everything they have. And I know that's not the technique when you're carrying it all in. Pretty quickly you realize, well, I don't need boom, 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 because I feel it right here and right here after hiking all day. So when you guys are doing the outfitting for these guys, what's kind of the big takeaway when you're talking about gearless and packing and kind of simplifying your kit so you're prepared for everything you're going to find out on the lake, but you also don't have too much excess?
Absolutely. You just might be very close to talking to the wrong dude on that, because a lot of times I am willing to put the weight on my shoulders to bring those extra things, but I've really been refining that, and I've really gotten better at taking less. And one thing that's really helped me, that little wader chest pack thingy you guys make, I clip that to my camera bag, and it enables me to bring the whole camera bag scenario and also flies. Exactly. And that's something, generally I'll pack a little heavier on the camera side. But when it comes to flies and tackle for high country, you really don't need too much. I can fit one of those medium bug lockers in there, in that kit. And it's really the perfect little setup to bring all the dry flies you need, a few droppers, and maybe some leeches and buggers to cover you kind of on those days where it's a little more difficult to get to those fish. If they're riding a little deeper, if you have a cold front come through, that right there, that's the one. Keeps everything right in front of me, what I need. And honestly, regardless of where I'm going, I bring that thing with me. It lives on the side of my boat bag when I'm floating, and I keep it handy to be able to just clip and go and throw a few flies in the bag.
I know how I use mine up in the high country. How do you rig yours when you're fishing with it?
Well, I've got it attached to my boat bag currently, but I just brought this exact setup to the high country. So I'll pop it off here real quick. I try to keep it pretty minimalist. That bug locker has really helped me be able to bring a ton of flies and really get them all in one box and not feel like I need 2, 3, 4 boxes. I feel like that's clutch. Those super lightweight bug lockers, that medium size fits perfectly right in there. So
this guy here is what you're talking about, Davis, right?
Yep, that's the one. Actually, the one that's a little bit more sized.
A couple clousers for you folks there.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah.
So
for those of you guys that don't know, this is Umpqua's ZS2 wader chest pack. So this is intended to be able to clip right onto your wader straps of your existing waders. And you can wear it right here where you're used to that flip out pocket. It's got enhanced features. You got the ZS2 ports on here so that, all of your nippers nest nicely. You've got a dedicated spot for your hemos. Yeah, Davis has it all rigged up. So I use this all the time in the summer for floating. Like it comes on and off the boat bag perfectly. It weaves in with Molly webbing attachments to the boat bag. These are the attachments that I personally use just on my regular belt when I'm up in the high country. Again, it's one less thing for me to carry. I'm going to wear a belt anyway, and I just drop these Molly straps right onto my belt. But yeah, the ZS2 wader chest pack is a killer piece for the high country.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I've really learned how to scale the flies down. I remember the first year I spent time up in the high country. I think I was bringing like the Ledges 650 pack, and I had all of my boxes that I would bring, whether if I caddis on the Arkansas, tailwater bugs on the Platte. I brought way too much, and what I've learned to do is just scale it down to one of the LT foam boxes and just throw in a handful of leeches, a handful of beadhead and non-beadhead nymphs and emergers, and some dry flies. Exactly. And that really just helps kind of make it lightweight. And I feel like one thing that could slow you down in the high country is bringing too much, especially in the flies and like terminal tackle. Some days you'll see the fine presentation situation where you need to throw a size 20 to 24 Adams or parachute Adams on a 6X leader. But, more often than not, I feel like you're going to be in that situation where you can throw an Amy Zant or a hippie stomper. And for me, that's what I'm looking for. That's why I'm heading into the high country, because I want to kind of break it down
100%.
and make it less technical.
100%. That's the goal, is to be able to fish your favorite dry fly, whatever that may be. And, having a couple good dry flies that are super versatile, that can do a lot of things well. You and I were on earlier kind of rapping about the hippie stomper in general. That's a signature pattern from Andy.
Yeah, that's an incredible pattern. I could not go anywhere without that pattern in the summertime in general, from about June to August.
And we've got it in kind of every color combo and size that is relevant to match the hatch or kind of elicit a strike out of a fish. So, you look at what one fly can do for you across a range, to kind of simplify your boxes. The hippie stomper's an absolute go-to. How many do you have in that box there, Davis?
Way too many. I think we're going to be looking somewhere in here. If I ever used that many flies on one high country trip, I must have been using like 14X Tippet, because it really doesn't need to be that technical.
Yeah, but you got to have some to share with your buddies when you're getting them, after you get into a rhythm with a few fish, and you want to walk over and be like, oh, they're on the lime hippie stomper today.
Yep, exactly. I think I kind of gravitate towards like the natural colors and purple, probably more than anything else. But the day that a purple hippie stomper doesn't work on brook trout, I'm probably just going to start cooking a steak and drinking a beer, because it doesn't need to be much more difficult than that.
Game over, man. Too hard then. I just wanted to remind people here that if you guys have questions on the high country, I know we've got some viewers out there watching us. If you guys have questions, let us know what they are. We'll answer them. We'll do our best to kind of keep tabs on it. Beards, Beers, Bobbers podcast. I like that idea. Davis has the bobber and the beer and the beard.
Yep. This is the bobber I use out on Antero when the wind picks up. I want to be able to see that thing.
5 to 8 foot roller, single chronomid under that bobber.
Single chronomid for sure.
Yep. For sure. Don't overthink it. Well, cool. I spent a lot of time up in the high country. When I first moved to Colorado, I was absolutely enchanted by everything that happens up there. The smells are different. The storms are that much more intense. And then you can find the most beautiful fish our state has to offer. These cutthroat that look like they haven't seen a fly in their life. That, if you get a 16-inch, cutthroat that's willing to rise up 10 feet through the water column and eat a dry fly with reckless abandon, it makes it really hard to go anywhere else. So I spent a lot of time up there, and man, I've learned some crazy lessons. That's when it all comes together right, when you get that cutthroat that'll turn on a bad cast and still rise up through there and take the fly. There's a lot of times where, you put in a good, 6-8 miles one way on a trail, and you get there and you throw your dry flies in front of them and you're like, eat it. And they just keep cruising. I was up at a lake 2 weekends ago, and they had some extremely large cutthroat. I was blown away. I didn't expect to see fish like that cruising. But my goodness, they had their afterburners on. I couldn't believe how quickly they were going. And in which case, you really need to figure out a way to slow them down and make them look at a fly and eat. And so in my box, I love to celebrate the dry fly. That's step number one, is the dry fly. If that's not working, what's step number two? What's kind of the backup?
And I'd say for me, the backup in almost all situations might be like a mini leech or, a squirrel leech. If I need to go subsurface and I want to get a fish to eat, it seems like all over this state, high country included, the leech is going to get it done. If that's not doing it, I might look at a scud. I might look at a rojo midge, but that's sometimes if I'm not getting a hit on the dry, I'll just put a dropper, good 4 feet underneath and let those fish kind of get it down where they're at and try and, seek it out from lower and not make them come all the way up on a bluebird day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I did. I went up there with a 2-weight, not my normal rod, to go explore a new lake with. I went up with a 9-foot 2-weight. It's kind of one of my favorites to fish with. It's a unique length weight. Yeah, it's a unique length weight combo that Sage used to do that they don't do, unfortunately. But I went up there and I tried to. They were patterned. You could see them kind of cruising the same line. So I hung a variety of different flies just under a dry fly right in their lane. Still couldn't turn them. So, I've got up here a couple things that when I go up and I'm going to get serious with it and I'm going to spend all day up in the high country, part of my kit, I bring, this may seem obsessive to some people, but I'm going to bring 4 different fly lines. A floater for dries. I've got a midge tip, which is one of my favorite presentations to give. I can put on there a leech and a couple bugs. And typically we get a little wind, and that wind will drag that midge tip just ever so slowly, providing a little animation to it, and just hang that stuff down in there. And then I've got 2 just full sinking lines. I've got an intermediate and a 3. Had I had those lines with me on that sunny day 2 weekends ago, I would have put on a leech and absolutely ripped it as fast as I could in front of these cutthroat to see if I could turn one. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to slice the pie when it comes to the high country, and starting on top's the number one. And then, my box, I've been fishing out of this one for a long time, but it's full dries on one side and nymphs and buggers on the other. This is an old original Umpqua UPG box that I haven't changed off of yet, which I absolutely love. But if you guys head over to the Anglers All blog after this, Anglers All has a list of flies kind of in those different zones you can fish, from dry flies as the kind of the good attractors, kind of down through some nymphs, up in those alpine environments, scuds, and a variety of little chironomids and caddis nymphs. There's always case caddis. I think they're the most gorgeous case caddis you've ever seen crawling around some of those rocks, because they're picking up all those little flecks of mica and pine needles and making their homes out of it. And so, yeah, kind of down through the water column on how aggressive you can get with those fish. We've got a couple comments here. I'm going to scroll through and just read some of these out. Have you guys had much luck fishing damsels in the Alpine? Yes is my short answer. And it depends on the lake entirely. But if you guys, one of my good friends, Lance Egan, if you just go look at his post from a day ago, there is literally a blue haze in his picture, which is adult damsels going crazy.
Huh.
Davis, there's some questions here about lakes. And working at a fly shop, you're pretty sensitive to where you send people. You have any suggestions for folks?
You know, from Denver, there's so many. And I think we actually just did a blog, not this week. This last week's blog was about kind of a Colorado road trip and how to take advantage of some miles behind the windshield. But last week's blog was a whole blog about how to locate high country lakes. And you know, I think the best way to do it is go on Google Maps, you know, zoom in to an area you're curious about, see what it takes to get there, and do a little research as far as, you know, deciding whether or not there's fish there. Certainly over the years, there's some lakes that have fish and there's some lakes that don't. You know, I've learned that pretty interesting to find out that some of these high altitude lakes are stocked via plane and helicopter. They just literally drop the fish in. And you know, Colorado Parks and Wildlife also does some management to some of these lakes to either restore native fish downstream, etc. You know, really going up out of Idaho Springs, Colorado, there's quite a few. In Georgetown, up on Guanella Pass, there's quite a few lakes you can hike to. And I mean, we're only talking maybe 3 to 5 mile hike, a 3 to 5 mile hike up, and then a 3 to 5 mile hike down. So, you know, a couple that come to mind would be something like Chins Lake, headed up to Georgetown would be Murray, Silver Dollar Lake. And these areas are just absolutely, truly beautiful. And they're, you know, pretty quick shot from Denver. From there, I certainly encourage you to kind of look online, zoom in on a lake, see what it might take to get there. There's another resource that I use called All Trails. It's a pretty commonly used app now for hiking and fishing, and really provides a lot of good info on whether or not it's a loop trail or a out and back trail. And it's a great way to kind of find that new water. Other than that, you know, kind of coming back to the flat tops, you know, that is the second largest wilderness area in Colorado. And there, I think there's like 234,000 acres there. And there's just countless creeks and lakes that you can fish. And so if I were to really look at, you know, an overnight camping adventure trip, I'd probably be looking up in the flat tops first and foremost if I had the time. And if I needed to stay close to Denver, I'd be looking in Clear Creek County. There's a lot of opportunities there.
Davis, on the idea of kind of hotspotting some lakes, you know, I know everyone's a little sensitive to it. Isaac Anthony here mentioned a good cutthroat lakes. Isaac, if you were kind of tuned into Davis's answer, you heard the word Silver Dollar Lake. That's the lake I went to 2 weekends ago. You heard what I'd do different if I went back. That's a damn good lake and not an awful hike. It's a little bit busy in the trailhead, but Davis, you guys just wrapped up. What number mile high 25 was that for you guys?
So we just wrapped up the 5th year of the Mile High 25.
That's what I thought. You guys are catching cutthroats in that, right?
We're, you know, the Mile High 25 is like a scavenger hunt for fishing, and puts anglers up against a list of species. And on that list of species is cutthroat, you know, tiger trout, lake trout, brook trout, rainbow, etc. And so it really forces anglers to try a ton of variety of places in a short amount of time.
There's a lake up there that was good for one of the species tiger trout, I believe. Is that too secret to share?
No, I don't think so at this point. And we've been looking at, we make little small changes to the tournament every year to kind of keep it challenging and kind of keep the you know, interesting factor there. And yeah, tiger trout up at St. Mary's Glacier, you know, it's pretty well known at this point. And there's a lot of people head up there in the summertime. It's not a secret spot. People go walk their dogs. They go diving and cliff jumping there. You know, but and for that reason, it can be a challenging place to catch one. if you show up there at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, you might be competing against a golden retriever and a cliff jumper, and so, but it's a beautiful place. It's a great hike, and it's a place to be celebrated for sure. But for those of you who are hardcore anglers out there, I certainly recommend, digging around and looking at some potential places on the map that might bring you somewhere you've never been.
Yeah, and one of my favorite ways to do this was to gather a few buddies that may be dumb enough to listen to your research, and hike them into the backcountry for a few days and on a quest for fish. And most of the time, it was on a hunch or a rumor that you heard about big fish in a drainage is about all you got. And that was one of my favorite things to do, was kind of everyone bring a flask of something different, plenty of blister kit, and head way back in there. And you'll be shocked at the variety you can find back there.
Yeah, I saw a post from Garrison from Rep Your Water recently. He went on a high country adventure and went way back and found some golden trout, and he picked up some serious blisters along the way from what I saw. And
those are some of the most epic blisters I've ever seen.
Yeah,
some of the most epic blisters I've ever seen. Like,
it looked like wore sandpaper for socks or something. I have no idea what he was up to, but I would not continue to wear that exact footwear moving forward in my life. And you kind of mentioned 4x4 earlier. That was really a big draw for me here in Colorado, was the ability. I had this like grandiose idea that I could take the 4x4 up so far and park it and pack up my kit and head up even further. And I found a few lakes just out of Idaho Springs that are perfect for that. You can drive up as far as you can, pack a day bag, head up even further, and really get to some water that, despite being very close to Denver, doesn't really see too many anglers. And that's the sweet spot for me, busting out a size 14 red AB Zant and just going after it until the wind picks up or until some sort of storm moves in.
You ever been pinned down by some big storms up there?
I have, yeah. I've definitely had to hunker behind a rock or two for a while and kind of wait out the lightning more than anything. That's something when you're holding a 7 to 9 foot piece of graphite, it's probably a good idea you hunker down.
Man, yeah, we had this storm. We were up fishing above tree line, and this storm dropped on us like that, and you could literally, your rod would be humming as you're running out with it. So we threw down the rods and kind of hunkered for a while, and storm blew through really quickly, and we picked up the rods and went back to the lake and started casting. And you could hear the energy cracking through the rod as you were casting, just that leftover kind of summer storm energy. It was so wild. And the best part of that whole thing was afterwards, the lake just erupted with fish, and everything in it seemed to be rising. And it was kind of one of those moments where it was like you had about 40 minutes where every fish that looked at your fly ate it. You couldn't get them off quick enough to go get another one. And then after 40 minutes, the thing went ice cold. It was crazy. No risk, no reward, right?
Exactly. What would you say is your, kind of number one, when it comes to Alpine lakes, there's a lot of, there can be a fair amount of information about each one online, but quite a bit of it's outdated. You might be looking at a write-up from 2014 or 2012 or earlier. What do you do when you're kind of researching something new? Kind of how do you cross-reference that data and I guess, how do you go about that?
Yeah, there's some amazing resources. I hope that in Googling everyone comes across these, right? We've all got the same tool set, especially for our Front Range wilderness area. We get some really great opportunity. The state has provided us kind of with either hook and line sampling or gill net sampling. to give you an idea of kind of what's in some of the lakes that we want to go to and when they last surveyed it, right? And then you can kind of, I always try to take into account the date that they surveyed. And then on top of that, I'm going to look at the last couple years of snowpack to see if there was any potential winter kill. If we have a really, really big year, some of these lakes, and depending on what happens, some of these really high alpine lakes, there may be an avalanche that buries it in more snow. It ices off later and they kind of run out of dissolved oxygen and you'll get a fish kill. So I'll take into account kind of proximity on some of this stuff, as well as snowpack. And, you know, the state provides anglers with an insane amount of awesome tools. That's where I go. I go, and my other favorite thing to do is to look at lakes that don't have a trail. So I use all trails all the time too, Davis. And some of them just aren't on all trails, or, you know, there's no marked trail to a lake, or there's one to a lake and then there's, you know, another lake just in a little bit different basin, another 800 feet up. Those are some of my favorite ones to explore. And I'm a fan of hiking beyond, checking out the furthest one, and then if it sucks, dropping down in elevation, which is way easier than hiking up to the high, or, you know, fishing for a while at the low lake and then popping up one more and having that be a bust, and then you kind of burned your time at the one that had fish in it. So that's kind of my process for going through a lot of this stuff. And, you know, one of the kind of gifts of working in the fly fishing industry anymore is that we're so well connected, and you got a network that you can ask some questions, and whether they give you an answer or not, some of them are very leading, and you say, well, it'd probably be worth looking at. And sometimes that's all you need to hear. And you tell your buddies, come on, man, I got an idea. I heard it was worth looking at, maybe. And you go.
Yeah,
you go, because
I was going to say, I can't tell you how many customers that I've talked to, and just striking up conversations have like spurred new thoughts and new exciting kind of trip plans for me. Really got to give a shout out to the customers of Anglers All for, you know, the shop has been there so long. The shop's been open since 1954. It's been in the same place right now since like the early 80s, late 70s. And as a result, you get some of these people who've been coming in there for decades, and they just have an insane encyclopedia of information. And that's kind of how I go about, you know, determining whether it's worth it or not to maybe try something. I heard rumors or this and that, you know, I kind of start with the rumors, do some research, and kind of break it down from there. But super fortunate to have that, you know, that industry and that fly shop kind of knowledge pool to come from.
Yeah, and I think that that anglers that, you know, are out there kind of on their own outside of the industry, take advantage of your fly shops. That's kind of where I led Davis a little bit, was these guys have some lakes that are known winners, right? Known producers that not everyone's willing to hike to, and they're willing to share that information with you. That's why fly shops exist. That's why fly shops are so important. So definitely stop into your local retailers. If you guys are here in Colorado, you know, pop into Anglers All. They've got an awesome crew that's out there exploring the high country. And, you know, I didn't mention that, but that's one of my first things. I kind of alluded to it with the network of fishermen, but if you don't have that, plug into your fly shop. That's an incredible network of knowledge.
Yeah, it's astounding. It's truly astounding.
We got a question here, Davis. Favorite high country snacks, meals you're packing?
Oh man, if I'm real adventurous, you know, I'm gonna bring the jet boil. I'm gonna bring a nonstick pan. I'm gonna pre-marinate about a pound of fajitas, and I'm gonna bring fajitas and tortillas up to the high country. And I've done that a couple times, and it does not disappoint. I promise you, if you can have fajitas at high country, there's nothing else there. You don't need your granola bars.
Damn. The people that are going on this trip with you next week are like stoked.
Oh,
that's insane.
So. I hope so. I think
here's a bag of pork. I've got some hot fajitas for you.
On a more low key day, I might have jerky and like Cooler Ranch Doritos with, that might fit the bill on some days as well. But fajitas at high altitude or anywhere fishing, that's where it's at. And you can just throw them in a Ziploc bag, pour them in a pan over a jet boil, and that's definitely the way to do it.
Davis, when are we going to go fishing? That sounds like I want to be a part of this.
Yeah,
that's amazing,
man. You're in.
Our buddies over at NoKipe said the best way to get info from a local fly shop. There's a hot tip. Best way to get info from a local shop: bring beer. In case anyone wasn't aware that that's kind of like that. It's the unofficial currency of fly shops. Go ahead, Davis.
That's definitely a super short track to making good friends with the fly shop, whether it's beer or whiskey or cold brew coffee, whatever floats your boat. Bringing snacks into the fly shop is like a solid, jumps you from a level 3 customer to like a level 10 very quickly.
Unofficial currency.
Yeah, it is definitely still currency. I'd say we're still on a barter system if we really break it down,
Well, guys, for those of you who are tuned in and watching us, if you guys have any more specific questions, we'd love to answer them. Davis and I are just going to kind of continue to share some stories about some of our experience up in the high country and kind of inspire you to get loaded. If there's gear questions about what kind of rods you want to be bringing, fly selection, rigging talk with the kind of leader and tippet we want to be using and kind of the advantages, disadvantages for rigging, all that kind of stuff. We're more than happy to answer that. If you don't get your question answered here, definitely ring up Anglers All, and then you can follow up a little bit more. These guys have a strong online presence as well for folks that aren't local. But yeah, we'll just keep rapping on some stories and kind of jump in on some questions that we get.
Yeah.
So Davis, when did your high country season start?
The high country for me is going to start later in June. But you kind of play the risk of that like last minute cold front in June. And sometimes that, even like June 20th, you'll get a cold front coming through the Front Range or, all across the state. And it can really kind of hunker the fish down a little bit. And I'd say once we hit the 4th of July and beyond, then, the high country season's fully open through till September, really. I've definitely had a couple days where I hiked above Georgetown, went way up, spent, the entire day hiking and attempting to catch fish and came up empty-handed, only to find out there was a fish kill. You were talking about that earlier. Found out on the way back down, I noticed some gill nets and the Parks and Wildlife was doing some kind of species mitigation and certainly been some of those days that are slow. And I think, I've realized that, if you can push it into July, I think there's, a better chance for successful days, all through the months of July and August, especially. Less
post holing and then, depending on what elevation you're at too, you got to let these native fish spawn and spawn successfully. And, when we were up at the lake 2 weeks ago, up there at Silver Dollar, I saw a cutthroat that was every bit of 17 and, about that wide. That looks really big on the camera. Let me scale that back. But just a really big old fish. Yeah. It was kind of like little tiny head and just all body. But it was upside down, dead on the bank. And, I was talking with our friends over at Trout Unlimited just the other day and talking about this, in fact, right here. And we were talking about kind of the importance of the high country when it comes to conservation and treating it right. We're promoting people to go up in these super sensitive areas. And a lot of these areas, you look at like the headwaters of the Arkansas, where there's some amazing high alpine lakes. Um, and it's a downstream effect, right? So if you can, TU has this whole philosophy, if they can protect the headwaters and really make the headwaters and keep them intact. And this is kind of where I was talking about the headwater state. Everything downstream can really take care of itself a lot easier. So, we as anglers need to go in there and kind of make sure we're being responsible when it comes to fish handling. I've certainly had my hands on some trophies, and man, I've been, you look back at your own angling and you throw it into the grass and you get the picture of the rod for reference. You're like, this is the biggest friggin' cutthroat I've ever caught. And I look back at those photos and it's got grass on it, and I'm putting it back in the water. And, I've learned a lot personally to not kind of handle fish in that manner. And, I would just say, kind of from that conservation mindset, keeping all that in mind as you're going out to these really sensitive places that even the foliage doesn't handle a lot of traffic well. The fish are the same way. They're sensitive little places that are super special.
Yeah, I agree. As part of the Mile High 25, we're really focused on the fish handling part of that tournament. And if someone has poorly handled a fish, we will not count that fish as an addition to their list of species. And really want to encourage people to kind of learn on that. There's so much good information out there, and if you were caught by your lips, would you want to be thrown on the bank? Probably not. So I just think that I think we all look back at our previous angling experiences and learn from it. But that's kind of part of this whole journey is kind of taking your own responsibility to get better at what you're doing through all of this and become more integrated with nature and with the high country. So.
Well, that being said, Davis, when you go up in the high country, you bringing a net with you?
Definitely. I if I'm fishing a little like brookie pond that's like a stone's throw from my campsite, and these are all 5-6 inch fish, pretty good chance I'm just going to try and land those fish by my hand. If they pop off my barbless hook, that's not going to be a huge deal because there's probably going to be a dozen more after that. I'd say if you're putting in the boot work to get all the way up to 10, 11,000 feet, it's absolutely worth having a landing net to successfully land that fish at your feet and keep it retained safely while you remove the hook and take your photo or whatever. A net is invaluable. We have so many customers who are new to the sport right now, and we go through the list of rod and reel and maybe waders and boots, and then the next thing I mention aside from Hemos is a net. And I can't tell you how many times a customer comes in and they avoid getting the net, and then I see them 2 to 5 days later show back up into the shop to buy a net because they either lost 5 fish or had a struggle with hanging one by the tippet. And net's invaluable for sure. Yeah,
it helps a lot with that. Well, we got 2 questions we're going to answer real quick here. One of them's in regards to rigging. Any tips on tying leaders to fluorocarbon tippet?
I'll take that. I think a knot I rely on all the time is the blood knot. I think I've just gotten in the habit of doing it. I think with doing a 4 to 5 turn blood knot with both materials, you get a really good connection. It's a tighter knot, but in a pinch, if you're in a hurry, a triple surgeon certainly gets it done. Triple surgeon's knot. You could check out our YouTube channel and as well as many others as far as tying those knots. Another one that's kind of a newer option for anglers out there, but the tippet rings. Umpqua makes tippet rings in like a 2 millimeter, and absolutely a great way to connect your leader to your tippet, especially if you're fishing subsurface. It just makes life very quick and easy. You can throw a clinch knot into the side here and a clinch knot to the other side, and you're done.
I would say with any knot, especially joining knots between two different types of materials, lubrication is the number one thing I think about. Making sure that knot is well lubricated so it seats really well and you're not building up any additional heat. But keeping that rule of stepping, not stepping two X's larger than one another, really helps in that too. If you're not looking to double your material over or anything like that. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. Fluorocarbon tippet's a nice advantage, especially when you're fishing subsurface. And visibility becomes an issue, especially in those super clear lakes. I really do like fishing nylon in the high country for two reasons. One, it floats, right? So we get a good presentation with our dry flies that ride high on top of the surface. And the second thing is it actually does degrade, and we kind of talk about that sensitive environment up there. So if you're not really responsible about kind of grabbing your tag ends or some of your loose tippet, at least the nylon breaks down over time, unlike the fluorocarbon. We got a couple more questions, guys. We're about 8 minutes out from being done here, so we'll kind of try to rip through these couple questions we got here. Davis, favorite fly line and backing for Alpine lakes?
Ooh, I tend to be fishing the SA trout taper or the SA infinity taper as far as a floating line. Something that I've been messing around with. This is a newer line in my, that I've been applying towards fishing, would be the Parabolic sink line. I think it's a little more applicable for me, a little further down, and I haven't tried it as much in the high alpine lakes, but it's really interesting. It kind of inverts your leader and really gives you an opportunity to, the way that it bellies out, the way the weight is in the line, gives you an opportunity to fish quite a few different columns of the water. So if I'm really searching and struggling, lately that's been my go-to. And I fished that up at Spring Creek Reservoir, probably a couple thousand feet above you this last week. And it was really working well. It enabled me to hit these drop-offs, I believe more successfully. Haven't had a chance to, truly bring it up to 10,000 feet yet, but that would be maybe more of a specialty line I've really been playing with. And other than that, I really like that infinity taper from SA a lot. I think that's kind of my kind of overall general purpose, fly line taper right now. Backing, is going to be, more to connect your fly line to your leader. And I just fish a 20-pound backing and you're all good.
Sweet. Yeah. Let's see. Do you prefer, I'm jumping here. How often do you find yourself stripping streamer in a high alpine lake?
I really prefer to get them on those dry flies, but there's those days where it's cloudy, it's cold, especially early season. You head up there in June and you really don't know if you're going to be post-holing through snow. And that's where I really think it's helpful to have a few different leeches, some natural and some black leeches to strip slow and twitch through the water column. That would be about as big of a streamer I'm really going to throw. To be honest with you, something, between 1 and 3 inches. You're probably not going to find me throwing a sex dungeon or something like that at alpine lakes. I don't know that they have that food forage that's that size. So I'd say maybe in the fall, if you get them on those last few days, you could probably rip some bigger flies, and that's to be determined for me.
Yeah, I think folks, the idea of a bugger versus a streamer, right? That's kind of that comfortable size offering for a lot of these lakes. And we've got Umpqua Feather Merchants has an epic selection of stillwater buggers and balanced leeches and jigged leeches and rabbit and pine squirrel and marabou. Let's see, we've got one more question here before we're done, folks. Do you prefer a tag dropper on a trailer dropper rig for fishing dries? Or sorry, do you prefer a tag dropper or a trailer dropper? So it's a rigging question. Are you going to rig that fly in line with the dropper, or are you going to put it off a tag and fish it off a dropper?
I'm probably going to fish a trailer dropper the majority of the time. I feel like it lays out straighter, kind of gives me a more consistent situation. I think I've seen some interesting, rigging situations recently where you could certainly rig dries off a tag, but my worry is it's going to kind of get wrapped or land upside down. And I don't know if you have a preference for that there, Russ, but I'm gonna rig a trailer dropper.
100%. If you're going to fish it static in a lake, you're going to get more sensitivity out of it if it's right off the bend of the hook than it is off your tag. And it's mostly because your dry fly is also going to, if it's a heavier nymph, going to want to tip up, and now your tail's sticking up in the air here. If it's more in line, the bend of the hook, which is the keel of your fly anyway, wants to ride lower. In a static presentation, I'm gonna choose inline every day over a dropper, given the chance to do so. Especially in the alpine environment, because then as it's doing this through the water, you're getting that motion with whatever you're putting underneath it, whether it be kind of a little soft tackle emerger or a leech or anything like that.
Folks, you can't argue that.
So yeah,
listen.
What's that, Davis?
I said, folks, you cannot argue Russell here on this one. He knows what he's talking about. I'd say go trailer dropper every time. If this is what he's saying you should do it for sure.
It's also way easier to rig.
This guy right here knows what he's talking about for sure.
Well, guys, I hope you guys picked up a couple things here. We're running out of time. We're about to get cut off and kicked off the internet. We're having too much fun, and happy hour is just about over. I hope you guys enjoyed this evening's happy hour on the places they take you high country. From Umpqua Feather Merchants to Anglers All, a big thank you, and specifically to you, Davis. We appreciate you guys taking the time to come on here with us and participate and kind of feature some of these amazing fisheries that the high country exists all over the West. So don't think we're limited to Colorado, but get out and explore. That's the biggest takeaway here.
Absolutely, Russ. I really appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to the Anglers All staff. It's really been as a result of collaborating with them and working with the crew there that I've gained spots, I've gained knowledge and techniques. Whether it's Ben or Chris or Dakota, Larkin, the whole crew there. Just really, if you have questions, anything that comes up any day of the week, the folks there can help you out, and we're happy to have taken part of this places they take you, and certainly really pumped you had us along, Russell. So thanks again.
Where can they find you guys, Davis?
You can find us online at anglersall.com. You can find us on Instagram at anglersall. And you can come down to Littleton, Colorado. We're basically right here in Denver, about 15 minutes from downtown on 5211 South Santa Fe Drive. So look forward to seeing everybody. And it's been a blast.
Cheers. Until next time, folks.
All right. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you, Russ.